Eat human.
Les humains à leur meilleur.
C'est tu apogeo.
ピーク人間
Ketogenic.
Luis is a smart and level-headed guy that doesn't get caught up in a lot of dietary dogma. He has been helping people lose weight and get in better shape for many, many years. He's a co-founder of an awesome community called KetoGains. You need to Google some photos of him to make sure you appreciate the advice he gives. He definitely is proving you can gain muscle on a keto diet, even though most people believe you need a ton of carbs to do so. Take a listen, and I think you'll enjoy his simple message, which is definitely not just for people trying to get swole. I've gained muscle on somewhat of a ketogenic diet over the past 6 months and just released a video on YouTube showing all the details because a lot of people have been asking about it. We are also back on Indiegogo with the new It's What Else You Eat, Not the Meat shirts and now unisex tank tops. We still need your support to make the Food Lies film happen. My production partner and I are matching every dollar that comes in, but we still have a ways to go to reach the full budget. Thanks so much and enjoy the episode. Hello again, everyone. Today we have Luis here, who I just saw in San Diego, and I saw him at the conference, and I just saw a giant guy with giant arms, and he looked a little bit intimidating, and then I went up to say hi to him, and he was so nice. He's the nicest guy ever, and we did an interview for Food Lies film, so thank you for that.
Hey, Brian. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure. And where are you calling in from today?
So I'm in Mexico City right now. That's where I live, and that's my base of operations, even though we cater basically people from all over the world, mostly from the United States, but we do have a big presence in Australia. Funny. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So you founded KetoGains, which is a website about nutrition and working out and all that kind of stuff. And we were just talking about, it's a little bit confusing where it sounds like it's just for beef heads or muscle heads or whatever they're called. And it's actually not that. What do you guys do over there?
Okay. So in a way, it did start as a resource for helping people to strength train or do any kinds of training or exercise while following a low-carb or ketogenic diet, because there was not much information out there on how to do it correctly. And that's something that I had been doing for quite a while before I started the website. So about 10, 12 years, I had been practicing low-carb keto while strength training. So that was the origin of the website. Then we founded a consulting company to help people with to get results for fat loss and strength training. And it's funny because our main demographic of paying clients is women, middle-aged women, and some of them, they've never trained in their whole life.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense, I guess. They're interested in losing weight and getting in better shape. Yeah, it's not all about bodybuilding. So
that's actually the least topics we talk about. More so, we are centered in nutrition. Of course, we use a low-carb approach. Even though we are KetoGains, we really adjust the diet to our clients' preferences and what may work better for them. Because again, even though we believe a low-carb diet may be the best approach for a lot of persons, we understand that there are certain situations where people should not do low-carb, or they should increase a little bit their carbohydrates depending on their way of life, body fat percentage, etc. There are some certain situations where higher amount of carbohydrates are always warranted. But again, I do think from belief and experience, both anecdotal and from years of doing the diet and with clients, that going low carb, it's much better for a lot of people. And mainly because we live right now in a society where we have first an overabundance of food, and this food is super processed and super high on carbs.
Yes. And I understand how, there are some people who can do well on high carb, and we talk about it a lot on this show. There's a different way to do things. It's a lot about personalized nutrition and what works for you, and also just well, fat and carbs are just fuel sources, right? But in America, in modern society, our carbohydrates aren't great, as the main fuel sources we have are very processed, and no one can do a very well formulated high carbohydrate diet, it seems, in modern times, right? So it seems to be that, and then fat does have its advantages for your body to be burning as your fuel. So we'll get into some of that later. So I think, yeah, we'll talk about all this nutrition stuff, and then later we'll get into some workout stuff. So actually, I heard you used to be skinny. Is that true?
Well, my story is a little wide on the spectrum because when I was a kid, I was quite overweight. And it's funny because being overweight like almost 20 years ago, it's probably nothing like being overweight as today. I was just looking at some graphics and memes. I don't know if you ever saw the first version of, what's the name of this movie? The Chocolate Factory?
Willy Wonka, Charlie.
Willy Wonka, yeah. The Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. The first version where Gene Wilder starred as Willy Wonka, I think it's from the 80s or so, was one of my favorite films, coincidentally, because my grandfather had a chocolate factory at the time. But if you look at this guy, the fat kid from the movie, Augustus Glock, I think, Gloop, versus the one they starred in the recent one, and then you correlate that to how the overweight children were in the 80s versus what they are now, there's a big difference. Like in my school, there were at most 5 overweight kids, and I was one of them. And now I look at the children currently in my same school, because some of my friends have their children there, and you can certainly see that at least 50% of them are overweight in one way or another. That's just an anecdote. It's pretty sad, but yeah, I was quite overweight for the time. I weighed at my heaviest, likely 65 or 70 kilos, which for a kid, my height was a lot. But I decided to do something about it and via diet and exercise, the traditional way, I managed to sort of lose most of my weight. But when I got to college, I was doing some things very wrong, and I still wanted to lose weight, and I ended up anorexic. I ended up at about 48 kilos.
So how much is that in pounds, do you know?
That would be about 110, give or take about that. And I am 5'6", so it's not that much. Normally, when I introduce myself, when I have a presentation, I show my pictures, and I went from being, like a fat Albert to Michael Jackson, very much. If you actually look at my pictures, and then via keto, I managed to gain all my weight back and muscle. So that's why I'm one of the most, I'd say, vehement proponents of using a low-carb approach to gain lean mass and muscle. And it's very much because in my case, and I've seen this with quite a lot of people, keto helps you to follow hunger signals better and focus more on nutrition and nutrition-dense foods, which is very important for muscle building. Instead of eating whatever, whenever, you can concentrate on eating the things that actually fuel your body in a more efficient and better way.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with nutrient density. I think that's so important.
As you know, the term that has been popularized in one way or another that tends to call empty calories to some types of foods. Mm-hmm. Some people don't really understand how it actually translates into food. But yeah, there are some foods that are just calories and have very little nutrition value. Whereas there are other foods that may have not many calories, but are super nutrient dense. And I do believe that for optimal health and as well as for optimal results, both in bodybuilding, that's the key. You give your body what it actually needs in terms of calories and nutrition. It's very much, or I tend to say that calories are like money. How you invest them and where you invest them is what is really going to give you results.
Yeah, it's really important, the quality of calories and your macro ratios. And,
exactly.
Actually, I was reading a book called Keto, and I saw you mentioned in it, which was kind of funny. You say fat is a lever. And this is exactly what I've kind of been talking about, is that fat and carbs are just fuel sources. You focus on protein, adequate protein, you minimize carbohydrates, and then fat is a lever based on your goals, right? You go up and down based on your goals.
I even made a rhyme to help people understand this a few years ago, and it goes very much like this. It's protein is a goal to make you grow. Like you always need to hit protein because your body is made up of protein, and you need to replenish protein on a daily basis. It's not just for muscles. It's for muscle tissue, yes, but also cell repair, enzymes, hormones, everything in your body is made out of protein, and you really cannot store protein outside of your muscles, okay? Then we have carbs are the limit to stay below. That's, of course, in the context of a ketogenic diet. And this limit is really much in accordance to a few factors, such as your activity levels, your body fat percentage, your insulin sensitivity, etc. But if you want to stay on keto or low carb, you have to limit the amount of carbohydrates that you ingest on any given day. And then fat is the fuel, so you are not slow. So the saying goes altogether is protein is a goal to make you grow, carbs are a limit to stay below, and fat is the fuel, so you're not slow. And yes, fat is a lever in the sense that depending on your current context and your current goals, if you're overweight, well, you have to reduce calories, and calories from a low carb or ketogenic diet come from fat mostly. You really don't want to reduce protein. And carbohydrates, it doesn't make any sense to reduce them even more, because you also need the vitamins and nutrients and minerals, of course, and green vegetables are one of the best sources to get vitamins and minerals in a very efficient way. Of course, there are people who do carnivore diets with a lot of success, and you can certainly do so. But for the average people, I see no benefit on restricting carbohydrates to zero. And you can get, again, lots of vitamins, minerals, etc., just from getting adequate nutrient-dense vegetables. And that's where you should use your carbs.
Definitely. And why don't you say some specific examples of those good low-sugar produce vegetables? So, classic green vegetables, spinach, stuff like that. But what else?
Everything that's green, for the most part, or greenish, it's going to be super nutrient dense. So the classic spinach, of course, zucchini, kale, which I do think kale is a little bit overhyped because really doesn't have anything against spinach. But seaweed as well, if you like it. Yeah. Brussels sprouts. Again, everything that it's green or greenish, cauliflower, broccoli, even some even higher carb vegetables in moderation, like tomato, even some fruits like berries. You can all feed a lot of them, and they're super nutrient dense, and you will still be keto or ketogenic. Like again, you don't really have to go 15, 20 grams of carbs a day, unless, of course, you're super insulin resistant. But, most people can tolerate 30, even 50 grams of carbohydrates a day and still be in enough mild ketosis or deep ketosis. Again, it really depends on your activity level. And you will get a lot of the great benefits of being low carb and keto without actually hindering your nutrition.
Yeah, I never thought you needed to measure ketones and do all that stuff in the first place. Isn't that one of your slogans? Something like don't chase ketones, chase
Exactly,
gain?
chase results. And this happens because we see a lot of people that tend to think that the higher ketone readings, the better. And it's a misconception, really. Only if you were doing keto for therapeutic reasons or to treat a serious illness do you really actually want to be really reviewing ketone levels. If you're doing keto for fat loss, it really doesn't matter that much. What you're doing keto for and what most people gravitate to keto is to lose body fat. So you have to understand, again, that protein is going to be the axis. You need to maintain your lean mass because it's not just about muscles. Muscles are not just for, looking good. They are, in a way, a sponge of insulin and are also, as I tend to say, your health pension for when you grow old. There's only so much muscle you're going to be able to build during your lifetime. And as you age, you're going to be losing it. So it makes more sense to build as much as you can when you're young, so that when you're old, you get, a little bit of it, again, as a health pension. The more muscle you have, the more carbs in a way you can get, the more insulin sensitive you're going to be. And they are also, let's remember that they protect you. You fall, the more muscle you have, the less chances you're going to have of breaking something. And you're not going to become sarcopenic, right? Sarcopenia is something that can actually be reduced or stopped by ingesting adequate protein during your lifetime, and also by doing some sort of resistance training.
Yes, a lot of vegans end up with sarcopenia. And also maintaining muscle mass as you grow older has been studied and is shown to be a very good indicator of health and correlates perfectly with longevity and how long you can stay healthy and active. And so, yeah, as you age, you definitely need to keep up the protein, keep up the muscle mass. And as you said, if people didn't hear that clearly, it was a pension, like a pension plan for your health. And
yes, that your muscles, that's what they are.
And then sponge, you said a sponge for insulin and for your muscles store glycogen. So why don't you talk about...
Yeah, well, your muscles store glycogen, which is in a way a starch. That's how your body stores glucose, either in your liver or in your muscles as muscle glycogen. That's what it's called. And it's very much used for exercise or other glucose is energy. So that's how your body stores it and then releases it depending on how it actually needs it. But yeah, that we were talking about not chasing ketones. So first, again, this is why some people reduce very much protein because they tend to think that protein will turn into glucose and then impair ketosis, which is really not how it goes. Protein can turn into glucose, yes. It doesn't mean that it will. There's a big difference. And for it to actually impair ketosis, you would have to eat an enormous amount of protein. And for most people, this is something that is going to be quite a task. And again, you really don't need that much protein either to build muscle or to be healthy. And when people say high protein, there's also this misconception that they tend to think in percentages. And when we speak about high protein, it's really not, the amount of protein that you eat in regards to a percentage, but rather in grams in regards to your lean mass. So what we suggest, for example, in KetoGains is very much in line with what Dr. Finney and Bullock suggest, which is also very in line with what most physiology textbooks suggest. You need to replenish your daily protein quota in a way. Again, we were saying before that protein is not only for muscles, but for overall tissue and cell repair. So your body really cannot store protein. You have to replenish this on a daily basis. Then, of course, if you're strength training, then you can actually eat a little bit more because, again, protein is also the building block of muscles. Anything probably that you ingest over this amount will be used as energy. And one way of the body to use protein as energy is, the amino acids can be used directly as ATP, but also they can be turned into glucose. And yes, that can impact in one way or another ketosis. But again, it's the lesser of the devils. Like if you're doing keto for fat loss, it's more prudent to reduce dietary fat in a way rather than attack protein. In the medium and long term, what will yield you the best results is to maintain your lean mass, not to lose it. Let's remember that also the more muscle you have, the higher your basal metabolic rate will be.
Yeah, which is good. And can you say the actual amount of protein in grams per lean body mass? You didn't actually say the unit.
Well, we normally suggest just to start with 0.8 grams per lean pound the person weighs. Lean pound refers to your total weight minus your body fat percentage. And that is a good starting point. If you are strength training, you can increase that a little bit. And what we suggest is to go just by 1 gram of protein per lean pound. And again, you only have to do that on days you strength train. It's not that you ingest that much protein every day. Only on days you actually do some physical exercise. And that's it. It's not that complicated.
Yeah, I think I heard you mention that. Yeah, you do 0.8 on days you don't work out and 1 when you do.
Exactly. So, for example, in my case, I'm normally about 10% body fat and I weigh about 160 pounds. So my normal protein intake is about 135, give or take. That's not much and in a way. And that's, for example, if I were to be following traditional strength training or bodybuilding advice, they would put me at about 200 or 180 grams of protein a day. I've never eaten that much protein in my whole life.
That makes sense to me. It's just people, haters, they try to just poke holes in your thing. You're eating way too much protein, this and that. 135 grams of protein, that's a normal thing. That's like eating maybe like a 8-10 ounce steak for lunch and then, a piece of fish for dinner. It's not crazy at all.
It's not crazy at all. Most people are already eating this amount of protein even without realizing, like, for example, a male. Now, what I do see as quite dangerous is some people who follow the ketogenic diet with the ratios or percentages approach and are restricting protein way too much. Like I've seen a grown woman at 20 or 30 grams of protein a day. And this is like something that not even a small child should be eating. And then this lady was even actually doing like marathon style training and was feeling all tired, lethargic, without no energy whatsoever. Well, of course, you're not even what you were eating for the whole day is what I have for one meal. That's not enough for anybody, just because she was trying to maintain the ketogenic ratio, which again, it's nonsense.
Yeah. Well, I don't even say I eat a ketogenic diet. I don't even like talking about keto. It's too much of a buzzword these days. It's almost, overhyped right now. And it sounds like we're kind of in line here where we're just talking about focusing on protein and micronutrients and minimizing your fuel source to your goals.
Exactly.
It's so simple. So I'm calling it the Sapien diet or Sapien lifestyle, whatever. I just want to get away from all these labels and just say, hey, this is what humans are supposed to eat. You don't have to count everything. Don't count calories. Don't count ketones. Just eat nutrient-dense foods and you're going to end up fine, right? You just eat some steak, eat some fish, spinach. It's so easy. It's delicious and it's not complicated.
Yeah, for the most part, that's really how it goes. Like, it's funny that we humans are the only animal that actually needs to count calories and macros and everything. And I do believe there's a time and a place for that. Like, if you want to really optimize your diet and nutrition because you have a very practical goal, you do actually have to count calories and macros. But that's very different than when you're trying to just maintain and you're already at a fit physique. You're not going to compete on anything. You can perfectly maintain a healthy and nice physique and health by really just listening to your body. Of course, if you're healthy, metabolically healthy, where those hunger signals can be translated properly. Because let's be honest here, like if you go by, I listen to my body, then you have a lot of people just listening to their body. I'm buying Starbucks every 2 hours, right? And that's why they got overweight in the first place. Because in this day and age of overconsumption and, we are bombarded every time with adverts that are trying to get us to buy whatever, whenever. And also it's so easy to just go and buy a Starbucks or go to a 7-Eleven and buy a pizza or whatever. And again, also due to social pressure, well, these signals are just not really reaching through. We're eating more so by visual cues or social context, etc., versus listening to our body.
I agree with that. And so when people eat a low-carb diet and they start transitioning to burning fat, their hunger signals and their satiety changes. There's a lot of metabolic changes going on, and that helps with appetite control. So why don't you talk about that for a second? How does that stuff work? You're actually certified in nutrition. You have a lot of credentials here. You're not just some meathead. So tell us what's going on.
Well, there are quite a few hormones that do impact hunger and satiety, such as leptin and ghrelin. But there's a thing called a leptin resistance, which happens to a lot of people because very much like insulin resistance, because you forced your body to not really do the things it should be doing. Your body has become desensitized to these hormones. Instead of eating when you should be eating, you're eating just because out of boredom or to pass the time, to self-medicate or to feel better. And so, for example, you can either expand the size of your gut, like it happens to a lot of people, and then you also need more volume to fill your stomach and to feel satiety, which is one of the signals. But also your hormones are, again, desensitized. You really don't feel the effect. They really don't work in your favor. By eating a low-carb, low processed, which can be either paleo or keto diet, there are a few changes that happens. And one of them is first, because your body has more nutrient density. Let's take in account these things. Your body really cannot tell you which nutrient it is deficient in. There are some cravings and there are some theories that do say that if you crave X food, probably it's because you're low on X nutrient. But for the most part, this has not really been proven, and it's not really so cut and dry. So again, your body really cannot tell you exactly which nutrient you are deficient in. Your body can only send you hunger signals. And because it's probably hoping that from whatever you're going to be eating, you're going to replenish the nutrient that you're missing, right? So what happens in a lot of people right now, as we were saying before, you're eating super caloric dense foods that may be low on the nutrient density score. So you keep eating, but you're really malnourished, and your body keeps sending the signals, hoping that you will feed it what it actually needs. So when you change to a low carb and keto diet, again, which is or can be, if done correctly, super nutrient dense, you're feeding your body less calories in one way, but also the food choices are going to be likely more nutrient dense. So you're really feeding your body what it needs. So first, that takes in account the nutrient density part. The second is because also your body is learning to use fat as energy. That also takes in account satiety and hunger. And also, if you're doing a keto diet, you are going to be producing ketones. And ketones, in one way, have a mild satiating effect, which means or translates that simply you're not really hungry. So I'd say it's a cascade of things that work in unison. But again, this is something that does not work magically for everybody. I see a lot of people that are just changing one bad habit of overeating to another. For example, they were eating, jars of cookies before. And now they're eating jars of cookies, but these cookies are low carb or high fat. So
yeah, supposedly. Or, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and in one way, it's probably better than what they were doing before. But for fat loss, it will really not work like they want. They do have to practice a little bit of mindful eating and also restriction. That's something that there's really no magic diet that will allow you to eat whatever, whenever, just because you're bored and not have to pay the consequences. And this is a discussion I sort of have with some people, and it boils very down to this. They say, yeah, I can eat whatever I want until I'm not hungry with keto. And yeah, the thing is that you are eating less now on keto than what you were eating before. That you are eating as much as you want is moot point, because now you're wanting to eat less. And that's a win. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. But there comes a time where weight loss stalls, and you will have to start again using restriction. And you see this with a lot of people who do keto in not the best way. They lose probably what I call the vanity pounds, 15, 20 pounds, and they stall, and they don't lose any more weight. Why? Because they just change diets, but really have not changed habits. And again, to another point, this is again also another discussion I have with quite a few people is, okay, they tell me, the prehistoric man didn't have to count calories, and he could eat as much as he wanted, etc. Yeah, but the prehistoric man had to actually hunt for food, had to work for the food. He didn't have Uber Eats where he just pressed the button and, the food magically appeared on his home within an hour, or he didn't get to go to a Brazilian steakhouse or a buffet where he could eat 4 hours, whatever he wanted. If you wanted to eat more, you had to kill more, hunt more, and, and move more. It's just not magically that the food appeared there. So there came a time where you actually spent more calories trying to eat more, and it was just not worth it.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there's so many things going on with that. I think that's a stupid argument, because they didn't have any of the processed food. They had very low sugar. Exactly.
Again, we're talking about nutrient density. It's not the same, even if you were eating super high carbs. There are some, you can look this on Google and look at how some fruits are when they are naturally grown before the actual process of human intervention. And they are quite lower on carbohydrates and sugars as versus, a cultivated fruit. The amount of seed or the size of the seeds versus the amount of the edible mass the fruit has is totally different. You would have to eat probably 10 bananas to have the same ingestion of carbohydrates from one or two from the current day and age. And the same boils down to a lot of other vegetables, right? That's one thing. And this is speaking about whole foods. Now, what happens when we're talking about, grains, wheats, flours, etc.? That's even more so, changes more so the nutrition of each food.
Definitely. And that's why I do consults with people sometimes and they're like, okay, well, you can't tell me that apple's bad. How are you going to tell me an apple's bad? I'm like, well, the apples are not the same. We've genetically engineered them. Like you said, people say maybe even 1/100th of the sugar. The first, crab apples, they were pretty sour. It's nothing like what we have today. So,
exactly. And probably one apple won't really give you any negative results, right? But it's what else are you eating the apple with? I just have this conversation yesterday with one of our clients, which basically was just fooling herself. She changed a lot of her habits, but not in the correct way. So she was first changing from high carb to paleo. And when doing paleo, what she did was, okay, I'm just eating apples, but how was she eating the apples? She was baking the apples with agave nectar. So she was making apple pie with apples and agave nectar. Of course, paleo ingredients, but it was an apple pie nonetheless, right? And she was having that 1 or 2 a day. So again, it really didn't change anything. And then she went keto, and then she was having a sort of a almond pie or whatever. Again, didn't change the outcome, and it didn't change the actual process. She just changed ingredients. So people are just changing ingredients or changing some other things, but they don't want to make the actual change, which is changing their relationship with food.
That's most important. I'm glad I skipped straight past that whole hack and cheat thing where people are like, how can I make keto bread, or how am I going to make pancakes with almond flour? That's just not the way to go about it at all, nutritionally or mentally, right? The whole point is you change your mindset. My thing was, I would always say, I have no time for that. I have no time for keto breads. I have no time for this. I'm just going to eat meat and vegetables. And that's just what I'm going to do. And it's simple.
And the thing is that those foods, first, they make you overeat. It's super easy you start with one slice, and when you realize you had 3, and again, it's super caloric dense and not so much nutritionally dense. That's one thing. And the second, it's, again, I have nothing against cakes or candies or chocolates or whatever when used in moderation. The thing is, people don't know about moderation. That's the issue. And the power, again, of keto and low carb is that it helps you to sit down, relax, and think about food in a mindful way versus when you are, in this carb coma, when you are eating a donut and a pizza, and you can keep on eating and piling calories, because I'm guilty of that. I've done it by having probably 5,000 or 8,000 calories within 1 or 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And I just can't keep going and going and going. And I'm, this bottomless pit. Whereas if I'm eating, a salad, meat and chicken, whatever, there comes a point where I just cannot put anything else in my mouth. I'm stuffed. And even if I did overeat, it's not the same, again, having 2,000 calories in one meal versus having 8,000, right?
Yeah, it's hyper palatable foods. I mean, the combination of fat and sugar is so crazy.
Fat, sugar, salt. All those, and basically, as you know, there's this science, which is food science, where you just try to make or invent new flavors and how to get people to eat more, because that's a way to sell more, right? They're inventing new flavors, new combinations, and again, it has become very much an entertainment. Food is an entertainment industry in a way. There are people who go out here in Mexico. You can go out every day to a different restaurant, and you will not repeat a single restaurant in a whole year. There are people who actually do that as entertainment. It's, you go Thursday and Friday and Saturday to different restaurants just to see what's new.
I mean, at some point, it's a weird balance, because some people say, hey, we live in this modern society. We should be enjoying life. You should be eating whatever you want and all the, exploring this and exploring that. And then, your diet's boring. I don't agree with them. I think what I eat is amazing and delicious. Every single meal is absolutely delicious, and I make most of my meals at home. Mm-hmm. So I just don't really understand that. I mean, I kind of understand it. They just think I'm restricted, and I don't feel restricted at all. I mean, do you feel restricted in what you eat?
No, none at all. And I'm telling you from someone whose partner, like my fiance, really does not follow strictly my diet nor my lifestyle. So I try to say live and let live. Like I'm not going to make you eat the food I eat or make, but you also don't have to feel bad if I don't really enjoy, eating a dessert or whatever. It's like, for me, nutrition is more important than other things, and that's how I live my life, and that's how I enjoy it, and I'm happy this way. Like you said, I don't feel restricted. For me, it's I enjoy the food that I eat. I like it very much. Otherwise, I would not sustain it, right? And again, I also like cheesecake and chocolate like everybody else. But that's something that I probably do a few times a year. It's not something that I do every single meal like some people want to do. I don't think that's healthy either, right? Again, whatever floats your boat, but then you also have some health issues. I don't think that you should be focusing on, and hedonistic things when you are 40 or 50% overweight and are having metabolic issues and have already borderline type 2 diabetes and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There comes a time where you have to think also about your health and what you're leaving your children with, right? So there's the thing about balances in everything in life. But also, again, if what I'm doing doesn't hurt anybody, again, I'm eating healthy, I'm not making you eat something that probably you don't want, then there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. And I sometimes say to people, yeah, it would be nice if I could eat cheesecake every meal. But who would do that? Like, what am I, like 10 years old at a birthday party, just doing whatever I want at every second? No one does that. Most people who are... I know. I guess so. But then they just think they have the right to do that and that they feel like they should just be able to do that. Well, yeah, you're gigantic and you're going to die.
Exactly that. Like everything has a cost, right? So if you're willing to pay that, well, what can I tell you, right? But then don't say that you're powerless, because that's also another argument that I see with quite a few people is like they tend to see themselves as powerless, as if there's nothing they can do and if it's not their fault. And I don't really agree 100% with that. Because you're not powerless. You probably are not informed and not educated, and that is something that you can take in your hands, or people can help you. But now that you have the power and you have a choice, so you have to take health into your own hands and take that responsibility. It's not that like the food falls in your mouth magically. You can always say no. You can always have a choice first to stop buying that. And it's also not about a budget. You can always eat more healthy, even with a limited budget, even if it's not keto, right? It's more easy, it's more convenient, and probably more to your liking to keep eating processed and crap food. Some people tend to think that eating healthy is going to be more expensive. And probably if you go to Whole Foods, it's going to be quite expensive, but it doesn't have to be that way. You don't really have to go to a fancy store and just buy everything paleo, keto, or natural or whatever. You can do great food choices without resorting to overly processed or super indulgent foods. People just want to be a little bit lazy and just go to 7-Eleven and get their daily supermarket there. But again, even if you go to a 7-Eleven, you can buy tuna in a pouch or in a can. You can buy even, again, if you don't want to do keto, you can buy rice, tuna, some vegetables, and you can fit that in quite a few types of budgets. You really don't have to go, again, super expensive. Of course, you're not going to be living on a cup of noodles, right? I understand that there are some situations that, that there's nothing you can do about it. But when you actually look at very overweight people who are living on a budget, they're not eating just, a cup of noodles. They're eating the cup of noodles with the big gulp, with some donuts. So they are spending the budget not in the best way possible.
There's no excuse. I've done a lot of math and I've been preparing for this film and doing different exercises like that. And it is cheaper to eat this way if you do it correctly.
If you actually do the math and look at the numbers, again, even doing keto, and I live in a privileged zone here in Mexico where it's super cheap, more so than in the States, but I've done it as well in the States with some of my clients. You can go and buy chicken thighs. You can buy scrap meat. That is, again, it's not going to be bad for your health. Again, it's not grass-fed, But you can buy good quality bacon, chicken
Ground
thighs,
beef.
tuna, etc. Here in Mexico, for example, I don't know exactly in the States, but I can get a pound of beef liver, for less than $3. And as you know, liver is one of the most nutrient dense food in the whole world. Like,
Absolutely.
exactly. Like a liver is one of the few foods that if you overeat it, you can actually get some negatives to overeating vitamin B and iron, etc. So, like again, it's not hard to actually eat healthy, and it's not that expensive. You just have to put a little bit of the work and study. Again, eggs. Again, you don't have to eat super grass-fed eggs, or you can get normal eggs, and they're still very much as healthy as the high-quality versions.
Yeah, just get what you can afford. And ground beef is perfectly fine.
Exactly.
Here, I think it's just a cop-out. People just want to either just try to discredit people saying that their diet is super expensive and no one can do it.
An excuse.
Yeah, it's just an excuse because I know I can eat for $6 a day. I do it all the time. I'm on a budget here. I'm trying to make a film. I'm trying to make a documentary. There's no money here.
Like a few years ago, I was living on a flat by myself, and I said, I'm going to do an experiment to see what is the least amount of money I can spend on food and still meet my macros and, especially protein, and be super nutrient dense. And I was living on cottage cheese, eggs, spinach, and coffee, for real. Mm-hmm. And I was spending, it was less than 600 pesos, Mexican pesos a week, which would be less than about $35 a week. I understand that Mexico, of course, is much cheaper than the States, but probably that would be about...
Well, it's $5 a day. That's fine. I mean, I can do that
fine.
In the States. I could do $6 a day.
I know. I've made meal plans for some of our clients that very much are like $5 to $7 a day. And we're speaking, again, eating chicken thighs, eggs, spinach, sardines, food that is super nutrient dense, and it's very cheap. Yeah, I understand, again, people are not going to be, probably they don't want to eat sardines, but they're super cheap and they are super nutrient dense. So
I love sardines. I don't see what the problem with sardines are at all. I would eat them no matter what the price was or how rich I was.
The thing is, again, it's just, I would say it's mostly ignorance or, a preconception about they smell bad, they're not good. Have you actually tried them? Well, not really. Well, why don't you start making an omelet with, eggs, sardines, spinach, and you have one of the most nutrient-dense foods that your body can get.
I mean, yeah, that meal really would have it all. That's almost a whole day's worth of nutrition right there.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, here, why don't we get into some details real quick? Well, I guess we kind of did talk about all these different foods, but what do you think the best sources of protein are?
Like for me, my perfect meal should have some seafood in one way or another. Like you don't have to have that every day, but 2 or 3 times a week is perfect. So I normally, again, depends on your budget, but I either choose sardines or tuna or salmon. If you have the money, go for salmon. If you don't, go for sardines. Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Shrimp, of course, some oysters, again, if you like them. Then I do try to have at least once a week beef or chicken liver, eggs on a daily basis, 2 to 4, beef, chicken, turkey, whatever kind of meat you like and you can get. Red meat is awesome, but I understand some people don't like it. So chicken or turkey are also very great options. And as much as green veggies that you can. And this is for quite a few things. Of course, vitamins and minerals, but also food density. Hunger is super important if you want to maintain your diet. So to add variety, to add a volume to your food, it's always, it makes sense to add the green vegetables. You can eat quite a lot of the green vegetables, and because they're super low in calories, they really won't impact negatively the diet. But on the contrary, they will enrich it nutritionally wise. Zucchini, spinach. I don't know if you got it in the States, but here in Mexico, we have this pear-shaped like fruit that is called chayote, which is like a mix between a pear and an apple, but it really doesn't taste sweet. It's not sweet. it has a property where it absorbs very much what you prepare it with. So you can use it as a substitute, for example, for potato or for apple. And it's super high on vitamin C, super high on fiber. So again, it's also a superfood, which helps a lot with satiety and whatever you want to use it with. So yeah, greens, of course, broccoli, green beans, cauliflower, if those foods agree with you. Those are, again, all superfoods which have a lot of nutrients.
Yes, I agree. So when you eat this way, your body becomes more metabolically efficient, right? There's something going on with you're better at burning the calories. I think I heard you talk about this once. You did a test and supposedly you were supposed to be burning like 3,500 calories a day, but you eat like 2,000. So what was going on there?
Okay, so every time that I've had these tests with a respiratory quotient, or in a lab test. And also if I go by classic body measurement equations that, they tend to estimate your basal metabolic rate given your lean mass and weight, etc. They always put me in about 2,200 or so calories. And then plus exercise, that would be even in some cases 3,000 calories. And the reality is that I never eat that many calories. I can maintain sort of with 2,000. But in reality, I just eat about 1,800 on a given day or even less. And when I have to cut, I need to go quite low. I'm saying like probably between 1,000 to 1,200 or so. That's when I actually want to go super low on my body fat percentage. Think like 8% or less. Mm-hmm. So I've started reading up on this to see what's going on, if my actual metabolic rate is diminished or if I personally have some issues. And after talking with quite a few researchers and influent people on low carb and keto and paleo, like Mark Sisson, Rob Wolf, Alessandro Ferretti from Italy, they've seen that people who have been doing keto or low carb with a whole food approach for quite a while, and who are also athletes, tend to experience, it's not really that a diminishment, but let's put it in this way, they have a more efficient metabolism. And what this means is that you need less calories to sustain yourself. If you look at it in a bad light, well, you can probably think that your metabolism is diminished. But I tend to see it from another perspective. Is I need less food to perform the same or better than anybody else. And if you look at this from an evolutionary perspective, it makes a lot of sense because I would be able to survive with less calories, do more. And this is, again, based because on my nutrition. I'm giving my body all the nutrients it needs, but in food that is more nutrient dense, but less caloric dense.
Less filler. Yeah, you just get rid of the filler.
Because I'm not eating processed foods for the most part. What I'm eating has, again, the package has more nutrients. And as you said, less filler. So less empty calories. It's just the calories in a tight and convenient package. And I more so, again, look at this as an efficiency viewpoint, very much like, look at this. In every facets of human history, especially in technology, we've always tried to get the most energy from everything that we do. We build a car and we try to make it the most efficient as to use less gasoline and get more kilometers per gas. And then we make a new cell battery for our phone and we want the cell phone battery to keep more hours per use, etc. But when it comes to dieting and eating, we want to eat as much as we want without the consequences. And it doesn't happen that way. Yeah. I prefer to eat for nutrition. And again, I'm not hungry. So I see no drawbacks to this way of eating. I'm performing very well. Like I normally train for 1 to 2 hours, heavy strength training plus powerlifting movements. And I rarely feel drained unless I'm restricting overly my calories again, because I want to cut. When I'm eating my normal daily meals, again, 1,800 calories or so, I can perform perfectly. I feel no drawbacks whatsoever, no tiredness, etc. I'm still building muscle. Again, everything's working as it should with a little bit less calories than probably some other person might need, which again, with the same height, build, and etc. than me.
I think that's so important because most people's battle with weight is managing their appetite. So if you could tell them they could never be hungry and eat less calories and lose weight, of course, everyone would would love that. And that seems to be what goes on with most people when they start these low carb, nutrient dense diets.
Exactly. That's again, that's how it should be. But then we are battling against society, which again, what society wants us is to eat whatever, whenever, right? It's becomes very much of a social battle, and this is when people have to actually practice a little self-restrainment and the usual say no. You know, you go to an event, to a dinner, to a party, and everything it revolves around food. You go to your grandma's house, and she gets offended if you don't try the cookies she made or whatever, right? So it's a little bit, again, practicing and learning to say no.
Well, for me, I do that very well for 5 or 6 days of the week. And then I was just at a barbecue on Sunday and I didn't hold back. I ate whatever I wanted. A lot of it was just, meat and, good stuff anyway. But to me, that's not a big deal. I'm just preparing my body to go for longer without needing to take in more food, right? It's like a warrior meal. Like that's what warriors did throughout history is they'd eat a giant meal because they didn't know when they were going to eat again. And maybe they're 2 days on the battlefield. So for me, I wasn't even hungry until 4 or 5 p.m. the next day. And there's no downside. It's just on a molecular level, your body just stores away the fat and then uses it when it's necessary. And so I just ended up using my body fat for longer. And now I'm back. I felt, a little fat for a while. And now I'm totally back and I feel very slim and great.
Exactly.
Even if you say, quote, screw up, if you just know the right information, you can correct for it. And so do you mess around with intermittent fasting and condensed eating windows, stuff like that?
I myself do practice intermittent fasting. I do so what I call intelligent intermittent fasting. Very much like with keto, people think that, with keto, having higher ketones is better. People tend to think that fasting for more hours is better. And again, it really depends on what you're actually trying to achieve with fasting. Like I just had a talk with a person basically at Low Carb USA. She was fasting. She had lost her period. She was restricting calories, etc., etc. And she was asking me for tips. And I asked her, well, why are you fasting in the first place? And she was like, I don't know. Just because, it's cool because everybody's fasting. It's like, no, you should not fast just because. It's like everything you do needs to have a purpose. Very much like if you're going to supplement with something, it's like, why, how much, the effective dosage, when do you actually need it, etc. So the thing with fasting, it's natural. Like we were not supposed to be eating every 3 hours. Like we ate when we could hunt and when we found the food, etc. But also it's not prudent to fast for long bouts of time, and even so without feasting afterwards and without any goal at hand. So I tend to be very vehement with our clients and with people who ask me in this regard, and I explain to them that first, if you're going to fast, okay, it's one way to limit food ingestion. So it helps with fat loss because of that. It also helps you with insulin sensitivity because, okay, again, you're not eating, so your insulin is going to be low, and that's a benefit by itself. But there comes a time where the law of diminishing returns applies. And if you're doing fasting for fat loss, but also, doing strength training, they don't work very well together. You will not optimize muscle building if you are training fasted. So, if you're going to fast for 12, 14, even 16 hours, but never train fasted. Break your fast before you train, have at least 25 grams of whey shake or eat a few hours before, then train and then feed properly. Never train fasted because training by itself is catabolic. You build muscle by breaking it down and then repairing it. And as much as people think and they have read about the human growth hormone increasing with fasted training, people are really not prepared to understand the studies. And they're just parroting what they read on some website or blog or whatever. If you actually look at the studies about human growth hormone increase when fasting and strength training, it has nothing to do with muscle building. So it's actually counterproductive. Just to explain it quickly, the increase in human growth hormone when training fasted is not to build muscle, it's to protect your organs. Basically, what you're doing is shaving off amino acids from your muscles and using those amino acids as to protect your organs, as to basically don't die. Right. So it's not a good thing. I know a lot of people who do one meal a day and build a great physique. I did one meal a day for 1 year myself. I didn't lose sustainable mass. I didn't build a lot. I built more 2 years after when I returned to following my own advice of not training fasted, etc. Again, it's very much about we're talking about optimization. If you want optimal results, let's do something that is optimal. Doesn't mean that you're not going to get results if you train fasted. But again, it's like you're spending 2 hours or 1 hour in the gym, you're killing yourself. Well, why don't you try to get the best results possible? Then practice fasting intelligently. Or if you want to do longer bouts of fasting, well, do so in a day you're not going to be training, right? And then afterwards, feast correctly, especially on protein.
Yeah, I agree. And I think if you fast for too long, it's anabolic. Yeah, it's the opposite of what you want. You want to promote muscle gain. So yes, I'm glad you cleared all that up. You don't really need to do more than 16 hours ever. And I don't ever see why anyone would do it. I'm not, a bodybuilder by any means, but I have no reason to fast more than 16 hours. And yeah, maybe 23, maybe do one meal a day, but still. Also, maybe people are doing intermittent fasting for different reasons, right? If they're trying to just do weight loss, then yes, I think it can work. But if you're trying to put on muscle, then it's not as good an idea, right?
Yeah, it's not optimal. You, of course, can build muscle while fasting. But if we are going to be, or you're going to be following fasting and trying to build muscle, well, at least follow the one I would say is the authority in this regard, which is Martin Berham. And he even suggests not fasting for more than 14 or 16 hours. And again, very much having some protein around your workout. Because again, we're trying to optimize fat loss and optimize muscle building. So that's how you actually get to do this.
Yeah. And well, you were talking about HGH. So my understanding is that high carb diets kind of turn off HGH production.
It's high carb. It's also going super high on calories. So it really depends on a mix of both.
We kind of don't want it. It sounds like maybe we should talk about insulin and working out. So there's some myths out there that say that you can't gain muscle on a ketogenic diet, which you and tons of people are proving wrong. So tell me about how insulin works. I think you want a small amount of insulin when you're working out. Is that like a targeted keto diet? How does that work?
Well, actually, it's just by strength training, you're going to be raising your insulin. And that's something that people don't understand. And this is why some people who are pre-diabetic or who are training very hard and never trained before, or that are diabetic, of course, experience mild hypoglycemia when they're training. Because again, your body does use glucose and glycogen when strength training, especially if you're doing so in a high intensity. And what your body does is basically your liver flushes out a little bit of glycogen, which is glucose. It turns into glucose in your bloodstream and it raises insulin again. So it's normal. It's a normal process. So what we found is that, for example, with our clients and I myself, by having a little bit of carbohydrates, we're talking about 5 grams of fast absorbing high glycemic like glucose or dextrose, it helps a lot to normalize blood sugar levels when you're strength training with high intensity. So that's like a way to have a great training. And it's not really to replenish muscle glycogen because we're talking about, again, 5 to 10 grams of glucose. This is not near enough to actually replenish glycogen. It's just to have a better energy overall while you train and also to avoid this feeling of mild hypoglycemia some people may get. Now, insulin is not really what some people tend to think as an hormone that makes you fat. More so, it's in a way a storage hormone or also a hormone that indicates your cells to open up and absorb nutrients. It's a nutrient transporter signaling in a way. Basically, it tells your cells, open the doorways, let the nutrients in. So that's why it's also intelligent to have insulin around your training. Now, insulin does not promote muscle protein synthesis. Insulin, what it does is that it promotes, or more so, it helps against muscle protein breakdown, which is totally different. When you're strength training, yes, you're destroying a little bit of your muscle fibers. That's how muscle grow. But you don't really have to destroy them totally. Just enough as to elicit the signal as to repair and make them stronger and bigger. So by having insulin around your training, you are helping protect this destruction in a way. So the end result is very much like an equation. How much you build versus how much you lose or destroy, the result can be either positive or negative. So as to optimize, well, you want a little bit of insulin as to have more muscle protein synthesis when strength training versus more muscle protein breakdown. I hope that makes sense, but that's very much the explanation. Another way to raise insulin before training is very much by ingesting a little bit of protein in the form of a whey shake. A whey shake does increase very little, but it does insulin. So it's again, you really don't need carbs to build muscle. Just with a little bit of protein. Probably if you are someone who is very insulin sensitive, has a low body fat percentage, you can add a little bit of glucose, as I said before, and that's more than enough, and that's perfect for training.
Exactly. Can you gain muscle and lose weight at the same time, and or the opposite? As I'm a pretty lean person, can I stay thin and gain muscle at the same time? Because I think the old paradigm was people would go on bulking phases, they'd eat a lot of carbs and then they'd go through the cut phase.
Well, you can, but it really depends on quite a few factors. First, your body fat percentage, right? If you have a high body fat percentage, you already have a lot of calories stored in as energy. So you can gain muscle if you do proper strength training, even while eating at a deficit, because you really are not at a deficit. You have the stored energy that you will be able to use, right? Second is, eating adequate protein. We've seen in quite studies, and also an anecdotal experience with quite a few of our clients, that even if you have a lowish body fat percentage, you can still build muscle if you follow a sound strength training program, and again, eating adequate protein. Likely, you could increase a little bit more muscle if you were eating at a surplus, but you can and you will build a considerable amount of muscle even while eating at a deficit, because you're giving your body the substrate and the signaling. The substrate is a protein, which is the building block, and the signaling is the proper strength training routine. Again, probably you could have built a little bit more muscle if you were eating at a surplus, but depending on your body fat percentage, there's also the drawback of also gaining a little bit fat. Every time that you lose body fat, you will also lose a little bit of muscle. Every time that you gain muscle, if you're eating at a surplus, you will also gain a little bit of body fat. So the key here is to play around with those numbers and minimize the fat gain while maximizing or maintaining muscle. So again, it really depends where the person is, what you have to the goal. So if you're overweight, your main goal should be to lose body fat while strength training, and you're going to be building some muscle as well. If you are quite lean, your main goal should be to build muscle, and you're probably going to gain a little bit of body fat as well. But again, you can lose it later on. It's just how you put things in perspective and the focus. You can do, again, both at the same time. If you do that properly, it may seem slower, but if you actually put the numbers, I prefer, in my case and with some of our clients, to just probably do the longer process instead of, cutting and bulking, which again is going to probably last the same and give you very much the same results.
Perfect. Well, that's kind of what I'm trying to do here. Actually, I couldn't lift for years because I had overuse injuries from computer use, and my arms were messed up from using the mouse for so long. And then once I started eating a very low carb diet, all that inflammation went away. So I actually was finally able to start lifting again only, 4 or 5 months ago. And so I've been able to put on some muscle since then and stay lean. So I think I'm kind of doing it correctly, basically just focusing on protein and micronutrients and just nutrient density. And that seems to be working for me.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. So why don't we talk about a few workout plans just at the end here? Start with like a basic. So some people don't work out at all. What can they start doing?
I do believe that the compound lifts are the basics of any training program. And one of the errors that I see, especially people who are new into training, is that they want to do super high reps, a lot of different exercises, etc. And how I explain it to them is that it's like when you first want to run. To actually learn to run, you first have to crawl, then you have to walk, then you can probably jog, and then you run. You don't just go and run from the get-go, right? So exercising, mainly strength training, is very much the same. You have to learn the basic exercises, which are the compounds. And the benefit of the compounds is that, as the name says, they work quite a few muscles at the same time. They are multi-joint exercises. You really don't need to isolate when you start. So by doing just the classic bench press, the squat, deadlift, and the overhead press, you're basically exercising your whole body in a more intense way than if you were isolating any part of your body. And the benefit also of compound lifts is that they also help exercise your neuroendocrine system. You're teaching your body new movement patterns. Because you're training at such a high intensity, you're also telling your body to use your hormones in your favor. And this is one of the main drivers also for fat loss, but also for muscle building. So again, learning the basics, practicing them, mastering them, and then eventually adding more exercises or changing the routine. But if you look at any well-structured training program, they will always revolve around those 4 exercises in one way or another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're the basics for a reason. It's compound movement. So I didn't understand this concept growing up. I played football and, we were maybe not taught the best workout plans or maybe it was just a lot of the curls for girls type of thing. Everyone's just trying to look good to go to the beach. But when you're isolating muscles, I mean, maybe that's for advanced bodybuilders. Yes, they want to end up isolating muscle groups at some point. But for the normal person, you want to spend your time doing these compound movements. I was trying to figure out what the exact science is behind that. And what I came up with, and you tell me if this is right, is you only have so much energy in your body to put towards these workouts. And if you're wasting time doing curls when you're just isolating one muscle group, you could be doing more compound exercises instead. Right. So if I'm only there for 30 minutes, right, I'm not trying to be a bodybuilder. I'm just going to go in for 30 minutes and do the best I can do in that time. Then yes. So I end up doing a lot of body weight stuff I'm starting to do weighted stuff like a weight vest because I've gone past my body weight, which is, I guess, a good thing.
Again, talking about Martin Bergham from Lean Gains. If you actually look at his training protocol, he's a minimalist. You look at this guy and he's ripped and has an incredible physique. He mainly just does deadlift, squat, bench press, and pull-ups. And that's it. Again, because those exercises are using your whole body. Like people say, okay, you said it before. Now you want big arms. Well, if you do pull-ups, you're going to be exercising your biceps to a level that probably, if you do it properly, even if you just did bicep curls, you never get the same results. If you're doing a bench press, you're exercising both your triceps, your pecs, and also your shoulders. If you're doing deadlifts, of course, you're exercising your back, but also your hamstrings and legs and core. And if you're doing the squat, you're exercising your core and your whole lower body. So again, it's a very efficient, fast way to build some muscle. And again, even if you don't want to look like a bodybuilder, those exercises are not only for strength, but also for health.
Definitely. It doesn't even boost testosterone. I've heard that doing squats even boosts testosterone in men.
Yeah, that's actually the one of the main drivers of using the compounds. They do help improve hormones substantially. For men, of course, testosterone. And for women, testosterone as well, which is not bad for women, but also all the other hormones.
Awesome. So tell me about, is it called Bayesian bodybuilding? I started looking this up because of you, 5x5, stuff like that.
Bayesian bodybuilding is a website by one of my mentors, Menno Helselmans. He's a Dutch trainer and a researcher. And he has one of the best, I would say, bodybuilding and nutrition certifications currently on the market. So I'm a Bayesian certified nutritionist and fitness consultant. And I also teach the same course in Spanish for people who want to take the course but are not very fluent in English. You can take the course in Spanish. We give it 2 times a year as of now. So it's a very comprehensive nutrition course, not only for bodybuilding, but for everything related to nutrition, focused on body recomposition. And it also teaches you about the basics of strength training and how to build a well-structured training program for all types of clients. It goes very much in depth on how to, it takes away all the bro science and explains you in a very concise and perfect way how to implement both diet, nutrition, and training to get the optimal results without, again, resorting to bro science and using whatever things that are not correct or evidence-based anymore.
Yeah, I saw on the site, there's actual studies behind this stuff. And this was really interesting to me because I thought you shouldn't be training the same muscle every day, that you needed to rest it. And I was doing maybe 2 times a week per muscle group. But then I saw that there's some studies showing that you can be doing it every day, 5 times a week. And it showed scientifically more muscle gain.
Yeah, very much. I've learned so much from Menno since meeting him, I'd say 6 years ago when I first saw one of his first studies. What he does is basically that he reviews the current research, and not only from one point, but from every aspect, and tries to put up what the best training methods are out there. Or again, also nutrition wise. So for example, he's not against keto, but he's not fully in favor of it. He is very much like us in a way that depends on the context of the person, right? Mm-hmm. It can be very well for one person. It cannot be the best for another. And the same applies to training. There is, of course, an optimal approach, which you can adjust to your context, right? So, for example, you were saying about training frequency. It's not just about doing more training sessions per week, but about doing them optimally. I come from a bodybuilding background where I did for years a classic bro split when I trained Monday arms, Tuesday legs, whatever. And upon research and playing with some of his ideas and so on and so forth, I've adjusted my training more so to have 3 routines, which I alternate. And I do train 5 to 7 days a week. And I don't feel drained because I'm just so, even though I'm getting more volume, meaning that I'm training more on a week-to-week basis, I'm giving it enough rest as to not drain myself. And thus, the end result is that you get better growth.
So how does that work? So you actually only need 24 hours of rest for your muscles?
I train full body 3 times a week. There are 3 different routines, which I currently have, but I alternate them. So even though probably one day I focus, let's say, on squat, the next day I focus on deadlift, every day I do some kind of leg training, probably not with the same intensity, and maybe with a different focus. So I'm still giving stimulus, but again, I'm giving just enough time to rest. So in the end, I'm training almost every day all my muscles, but with different frequency and volume or intensity as well.
Okay, good. That's what I was trying to do. I almost landed on the same thing accidentally. And I do 5 days a week, but some of it's sprinting, some of it's, playing basketball. But when I'm lifting, I tend to focus some days on some muscle groups, but I actually haven't been getting full body in every day, but now I will do more because I like that concept. Yeah, it's like heavy day and light day per the muscle group. So you're not doing a heavy day per muscle group back to back.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. That's an awesome way to do it.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're saying is, just don't do heavy days back to back on the same muscle group. It's that you're doing sort of light days in between.
Exactly. At least I would say give it 24 hours.
Okay, interesting. So one of the last things I want to talk about was cardio, because I grew up thinking that that's how you lose weight and that, everyone should be doing like an hour of cardio a day and all that kind of thing. And then I stopped doing cardio almost altogether, except for the 1 day a week I play basketball. And I was leaner because I started lifting more. And so I think we just have like a myth around cardio, and that it's more about high intensity sprints and just pushing your body in the gym and not trying to, run off food and do 1 million hours of cardio, right?
The thing with cardio is that, again, what people know about diet and nutrition and training, it's from magazines. And some of them are correct in one way. A lot of them are just saying bullshit. And the sad thing is that these myths are even propagated by doctors who don't read between the lines or are not well prepared to give advice, because that's a little bit out of their scope. Again, I have nothing against doctors, but for example, you have someone who studied, I don't know,
internal medicine.
Internal medicine giving you advice on nutrition. And as you know, they take very little nutrition in their careers. And most of what they are suggesting is what they are hearing on the news and magazines. Just because they are a doctor, we treat them with utmost respect and as an authority, right? So it's just an example of what goes with fitness nutrition. And the thing about cardio is that, first, you really don't burn as much calories as you think with cardio. Like never, ever use your fitness trackers or the calories burned by the machine says. That's total hogwash. It doesn't go that way. And this is why you have people then doing, 1 hour of cardio. The machine says you burn 300 calories. Then they think, and I deserve the donut, right?
It's insane.
So no, it doesn't work that way. First, if the machine says 300 calories, I'd say at most you burn 100. And then there's no, again, you're doing cardio to lose body fat. Then why are you eating calories back again? It just doesn't make any sense, right? That's one thing. The second is, the more you do cardio, the more proficient you become at it. So you actually burn less and less calories over time. This is something people don't realize and they do not know. This does not happen with strength training, because on strength training, you're always increasing the resistance. Well, you're supposed to be, of course, right? If you don't, well, nothing happens. But you're always using a resistance on strength training. You're supposed to be increasing the resistance week after week or session after session or whatever. But on cardio, it doesn't work like that. You're just probably doing the same cardio and elliptical or whatever every single session. So again, you burn less calories time after time. The second is, if you're doing cardio for fat loss again and you're eating calories back again, it's moot point. And also,
we end up getting hungry.
Cardio, and also cardio makes a lot of people more hungry.
Yeah.
Whereas strength training does not. Another thing that's very important is cardio and strength training have an interference effect. Your body cannot do two things at the same time. Either it breaks down or it constructs. So if you're doing lots of cardio while you're strength training, especially at the same session, you're not going to be proficient in one or another. So my advice normally is, if your goal is fat loss, let's just focus on the diet and don't do cardio. If you have time to do exercise, the exercise should be strength training. Because again, strength training builds muscle, and more muscle means a higher basal metabolic rate. So this means, again, you're going to be burning calories passively without doing anything. Whereas with cardio, you're probably just going to end skinny fat. You're probably going to lose some weight, but also some muscle. So in the end, the net result is not as positive. Another important thing is that people say, well, but cardio is healthy because it increases your heart rate. Well, if you actually go and lift some weights in a proper way, I want you to check your heart rate. And you will see that probably you're going to have it as much or even higher than if you were running or sprinting, and for a much longer time. So again, doing just cardio for the cardiovascular benefits is moot point. You get the same if you do the compound exercises.
Yeah, unless you end up like some of these people I see that go to the gym for an hour and they're on their phone for 40 minutes.
As well.
So yeah, if you're actually doing a workout, your heart rate is up. And that's kind of the last thing I wanted to talk about, is going to failure, which I've gotten into lately. Talked to Ted Nyman a lot, and he's really interested in that, and it seems to work really well to me. It's signaling your body to get stronger. What's going on even with the muscle tissue? Do you hit like a different level of muscle tissue by doing that?
Well, you really don't have to go to failure. You have to accumulate certain volume in a way, but going to failure is in a way a good indicator, right? So this is also some research coming out in this regard that suggests that even if you have a well-structured training program, the optimal way to know if you're training at, let's say, in an efficient way is up until you have like 4 reps left in the tank. So that would be between, using a weight heavy enough so that you can lift between 5 to 12 reps and at most 20, depending, of course, on the training you're doing. But if you can do more than 20 reps, it's just called junk volume. You're really not doing anything, right? So you need to increase weight. But if you can do 12 reps and, by the 12th rep, you are basically draining, and you could probably do 2 to 4 extra reps, that's a good enough intensity. And then probably adding 2 to 4 extra sets, that's more than enough for that muscle. And you just repeat that session after session and use the same approach with any exercise.
Okay, that makes sense to me. And basically,
let's take that to build muscle, one of the most important factors, it's mechanical stress. So what is mechanical stress? It's very much doing the full range of motion and creating this stress is what we talked before, breaking a little bit the muscle fibers. But it doesn't have to be static. It's best if it's done in the complete motion of said muscle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it also makes sense to me. Maybe you don't have to go to failure, or maybe we're kind of talking about different things. Maybe I'm just talking about body weight exercises and stuff like that. And you're talking about more about doing, big lifts. So you wouldn't want to do deadlifts to failure ever. But I think what I'm trying to say is don't just go into the gym and you pick a weight and you're like, oh, I do 10 reps, 3 sets. And then every week it's, oh, I do 10 reps, 3 sets. That's not going to get you anywhere if you're just always just doing, go to 10 and then you're done. It's more about go till you hit your limit and always be increasing.
Yes. But here's the deal. Here's something that I learned by failing. Mm-hmm. I've been training for almost 23 years. And I could say that probably half of them were not spent very well because I was not really doing things as I should, right? I was probably doing just the isolation exercise on machines, training row splits, and most importantly, really didn't measure and record my lifts and my progress. I live by this saying that is that which is not measured cannot be managed. And so I remember one of the best things that I started doing and getting incredible results. And you can see my evolution. I have that even on Reddit when I first posted to a few years later. When I started tracking my lifts with an app or a pen and paper, but in my case, it was very much with an app where I could see the weight I had lifted on my last session. And then I decided to increase even 5 pounds. So I pushed myself. And again, the app helped me because it was in a very visual way. That's when I started to really get results. Because if you just go by feel without actually looking at that you had a previous bigger record, for example, what happens is that sometimes you become very complacent. So you feel probably tired or depressed or really whatever reason, and you just really don't push yourself. And if you had that extra motivator, probably you could have added 5 extra pounds or 2 pounds, whatever. And, this is about grinding. And 2 pounds that you add in 1 week then becomes probably 4 or 6 pounds in 1 month, and so on and so forth. And when you realize 100 pounds becomes 200, and that's how you are actually growing muscle, not just staying in the same place for years and years and years. And this is quite a big factor that I see with people who don't get results because they've been lifting for 5 years, but haven't really increased the weight because they don't have a well-structured plan and they're not pushing themselves.
Yeah, that's the main point here. So thank you so much. Do you have anything else here?
Well, I think we could talk for hours and hours. But I think we covered a lot of topics.
Yeah. It's been really great. And I'll tell people to go to KetoGains.com if you want to learn more. You guys are on Reddit. Your co-founder, I saw some before and after pictures of him, of Tyler. It's insane. It's amazing. This guy was gigantic and now he's in great shape.
Yeah, and he's improving, on a daily fashion. He went from almost 500 pounds to his current 200 and something. First, but just, with keto. And then he came back and started also doing resistance training. And he's a beast. He also does now Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on tandem with the strength training. So this guy goes for hours and hours and hours and is killing it.
That's so cool. And so anyone listening, I mean, even if you're 500 pounds, it's all possible to make a change. So
Yes.
So yeah, thanks so much for talking to me. And I guess I'll be talking to you again sometime. I mean, we're getting you in the film. The film isn't about working out, but I definitely wanted to include, you got some footage of you talking in San Diego. And I think it's really important to just touch on it. So food lies.
Well, I do think that strength training is, again, not just for looking good, but as we said before, it's your health pension. And even though I started training, of course, to get a better physique, the reason why I continue to do so is because as I aged, I see, my peers and friends having their health decline. And one of my biggest fears is getting to an old age and not being able to do the things that I do now. And again, I do think that having enough muscle to move yourself and do everything, it's super important. I don't want to reach 90 years old if I am going to be wheelchair bound. I'd rather live to 80 and do the same things and be independent and be able to do all the things by myself.
Absolutely. I have the same goal too. I want to be around if I have kids and be able to throw footballs with them when I'm 80. So
yeah, awesome.
Let's make it happen, everyone. Thank you so much, Luis, and I'll talk to you again sometime.
Thank you, Brian.
And that's a wrap, folks. If you're fired up about this muscle stuff, check out more on Luis or my YouTube video about my 25-minute workouts. I really appreciate the 5-star reviews people are leaving through the Apple Podcast app or iTunes. It's making all this work worth it and helping with our visibility. Check out the Food Lies film on Indiegogo and find us on social media by searching for Food Lies. We have some awesome episodes coming out soon, so stay tuned and subscribe. Thanks.